Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, now this is the main event for which I was the mere warm-up. Mike will be speaking to you about the registry. He is the project manager responsible for this, but we've also got Graham Schofield here, who's got 40 years plus experience. Rarely will you get so close to the truth. But also remember that what they're dealing with is a work in progress. Bear in mind that what we have now may not be what it ultimately becomes, but I would like to welcome Mike to speak on what the registry is now doing. Thank you, Mike.
I can tell you that's a hard act to follow. Just briefly before I start off, I think you've got all my notes there. There'll be some things I may not bring up, so if you just want to jot them down as we go through. So I'm going to roll through this slide. If you do want a slide presentation or a copy of this, let Stephanie know and I can get that file to you as well. And again, thank you for the opportunity to present today. And just what Stephanie was saying before actually astounded me as to the lengths that some of you go as family historians to find information. And I've had a couple of words to some people just on the break and before, and the stuff that you know is just historically is absolutely amazing. So with the limited things I'll bring up to you today here, hopefully they'll be able to help you along a little bit. And you'll see as we go through, I've got the opportunity for you guys to give me some feedback at the end too. You'll see that I've got some registers out here, and Stephanie told me that you would be bashing us up to see those, and if you're all good, you can have a look at those later on too. So, before we start off, just a little bit of background about where we're going with this. BDM has undergone quite a number of operational and technical changes over the last few years. So probably even 2 years ago, our operation is nothing to what it is today. And it's a continually changing thing, and we work quite hard to make sure that we can deliver the best possible service that we can to customers. Some people are not happy and some people are, and we have to try to deliver the best that we can do. And as we go through, and you'll see that I'll be talking about the Revitalization program at BDM, there's quite a number of changes that will be happening both now and in the future with our business. With me today is, as already mentioned, Graham Schofield. So my technology is not going to let me down, which is great. I've only been there for 2 years and I'm an acting project manager, but you can see Graham's been there a long time, 40 plus years. So if there's something that anybody doesn't know about the registry, they'd have to be doing better than Graham because he's just magic. And again, with some of the questions that happened today, I've only been there 2 years, so I don't know half or not even a quarter or that much as Graham does. So he's here today to help me out. And also Kate from Corporate Services Branch, and I'll be talking a bit about where Kate fits into all this at the end of the presentation. And Kate today is doubling up as my bodyguard too, so you'd better be careful. The agenda today for my presentation, a bit about our role, RBDM, a little bit about fraud prevention, some information about the Revitalisation program, and in the Revitalisation program is the Digitization project, which I think a lot of you will be aware of. Also, where BDM fits in with the Department of Justice and Attorney General, the new website, which I'm sure you're all keen to know about, and also what we've got coming up at BDM as well. So a bit of information to get through this morning. I'll have a look at that graph. I'll give you a bit of background behind that graph. Before we go though, as I mentioned, I'd just like to put up here first off that I'm not a genealogist or I'm not a family historian. So the way that me and you view things will be a little bit different. So if you're going to ask me a heap of stuff about why this, why that from a historical context, I might have to have a sit down because I spoke to Stephanie the other day about a few of these things. And I'm sure on about step 2 that she was telling me how to find a record my eyes glazed over. So be gentle with me today if you can do. We decided about. I was offered to take this project over, the online project, 12 months ago. The project had actually been formulated about in 2007. And originally what the project was aimed to do was to provide an online capability for customers to order birth, death and marriage historical certificates. I took over the project, and because of the Digitization project and the availability of these birth, death and marriage images, it was decided to put those into the mix as well to be able to offer our customers the ability to order online, both certificates and images. And we started work on that project. I did it about 12 months ago. And I can tell you from the outset of that project, there was a lot of input and a lot of valuable input from Stephanie and from a lot of genealogists and family historians. At the same time, to get this project up and running, I had to have a lot of input from different government departments and also different civilian firms and also individuals. And I kind of relate it to, I don't know if you've ever seen two elephants mating. There was a lot of dust and trumpeting and ear waving and nodding and positioning. And 12 months later, there was a result, and the actual baby was the ability to be able to order these things and pay for them online. So there's been quite a bit of work gone into this particular service. And as we go through, you'll probably say, yeah, but that's no good and that bit's no good. And I guess you may as well equate it to a baby elephant. We had a bit of a problem at birth, and it was a little bit staggery, but sort of we're up and running now. And we're maturing every day. And you'll see at the end of the presentation the things that we're going to do going forwards. And that comes from a lot of your feedback. And a bit more about that later on. Hiccups, yes, there were. We launched on the 6th of June, and that was an unofficial launch. And the Attorney General actually did an unofficial launch, and the Attorney General officially launched on the 19th of June. We had a fair bit of pressure to get this launched as soon as we can, and we launched it to coincide with Queensland Day on the 6th of June. The other option we did have was to leave it until 2015, which would have coincided with the completion of the Digitization program. And at that point in time, we would have had a digital image for each birth, death and marriage record. And I think we made the right decision, even taking into account there were some hiccups along the way, to get this service out to you as soon as we could do. So I think operationally, looking at from our perspective, operationally it was a success, and it did what we wanted it to do. So we got the service to you. Nobody was supposed to know about this when it was launched, but you can have a look at this graph, and I'll just take you through some numbers on this thing. On the first day of launch, on the 6th of June, we received 185 online orders, which was an increase of just on 400% in daily order terms. So that's pretty good for a service that nobody was supposed to know about. You can see our website hits. We increased from around about 7,000 a day for the week ending on the 2nd of June to 28,500 daily for the week ending on the 9th of the 6th. So remember, nobody's supposed to know about this yet. The search engine is amazing. Visits in the week ending the 30th of the 6th went up to around 179,000 visits. Previous to that, it was about 28,000. So from that point of view, or from the aspect of, did people know about it? Well, they weren't supposed to, but they certainly did. I spoke to historians after it was launched, and I said, did you know about this? And they said, oh, look, we knew about this well before you were going to launch it. So I don't know where the information came from. I didn't say it. And funnily enough, on the 6th of June, when it was discreetly launched, there was a blog from someone in the US. I don't know his name, but he's quite a prominent historian. And he had a full description of what it was and how it worked. He probably knew more than me about it. So I don't know where they got the information. Who uses that now, the online ordering facility? Many of you? A few? Yep. Okay. Just the challenge of this huge increase in orders, and it's sort of peaked at the moment. It's probably unprecedented as far as the amount of business that we're doing, and it's quite great for our business. It produced a huge internal challenge to be able to produce all these certificates on time. We have a 10-day turnaround time for certificates, and we've been able to get that in June. The average was 5.5 days. Some might have been a bit longer. Some people have contacted us and said we didn't even get it. We've had a look back, but we've been able to send out all of them. The vagaries of Australia Post sometimes give us a bit of a problem, but 5.5 days is not a bad effort to get that amount of business out the door. And funnily, and Stephanie brought up something before about how morbid you guys are. Death certificate and image orders outnumber births and marriages by 2 to 1. So that's huge. And I'm going to bring that up a little bit later into the presentation because it's quite an interesting point too. Just moving on, our role. So we're the custodian of life events, as everybody knows. We issue and administer documents relative to life events. We're primary providers of proof of ID documents, and they're used for applying for passports, driver's licences, school, etc., school enrolments, etc. We're becoming more and more, we're providing a greater role every day in assisting the government in identity management and fraud prevention strategies. Because we've got such a broad range of records, we're using that information now and providing it to other government departments to make sure that the people in transport or in the police or wherever it might be, they're actually dealing with the people they say they are through certifying these documents. So it's a big thing, fraud prevention. I'm going to talk about that in a little while going down the track. We also provide statistical data to universities and other research organisations and other government departments. You can see historical services are a welcome consequence of our business, and they are. We think that's quite an important part of our business. However, what we need to remember is that we have other core businesses, or we have other core functions that we need to look after at the same time. And you could probably understand within a work context, we need to balance all of these off against each other and make sure we try to deliver the best service we can for Queenslanders, not at the detriment of each one, but of course we have limited resources. So we need to keep our priorities in mind. I just want to spend a minute on identity fraud. The registrar said to me when I was making up this presentation that he thought it quite important to bring this up to you guys. Specifically within 2013 and also as we go forward, identity fraud or cybercrime really should be influencing everything that we do, particularly in an online sense. The Australian Crime Commission have identified identity fraud as one of the largest, serious and mostly misunderstood crimes facing our security today. To give you an idea of the current scale of identity fraud, AUSTRAC reports that almost 500,000 Australians every year are affected by identity fraud. That's quite a big number. The ABS in 1011 identified identity crime as one of the fastest growing crimes, and it's currently costing us $1.4 billion a year and rising, and not all of identity crime gets reported. So that's a fairly important thing to be considerate of when we're passing information around, especially family information. Why should that affect you as family historians? It's old information anyway, doesn't matter. But the big thing about it is the crooks don't discriminate. So if they can get information, they get a bit from over here, a bit from over there and a bit from over there and piece it all together. I was talking to Stephanie the other day about it. She said, well, what do they use it for? So I don't know what they use it for, but they're getting about $2 billion a year out of it. So it's quite serious. From our point of view, we're looking at the fact that yes, we do have historical information, and yes, it should be accessible to historians and anybody who actually wants it. But we don't want to be able to give it out carte blanche. So we don't want to say, well, here's a whole list of our records, go and do what you want with it. And these are some of the things that some of the historians and some of the genealogists get upset with and say, well, why can't we get those things? Or why can't we get these full lists? Or why can't we get that? Again, what we need to do is we need to be mindful of this. And we need to structure our operations around about the best way that we can provide a secure environment for you to give you information. What you do with it is your problem when you get it, so we just want to be careful about handing the information out. And the registrar was telling me the other day about a seminar that he went to about identity crime, and the big thing about identity crime is you need to, and I just thought about this the other day and put it into the notes, the psychological impact of losing your wallet is enormous because you've lost your driver's licence, if you've got a pension, you lost your pension card, maybe your Medicare card. How many people keep their account numbers and their PIN numbers in their wallet? You've basically lost you. So you've lost your whole identity and somebody else can create that over there and do whatever they want with it at the end of the day. And you're pretty quick on the phone to ring everybody up and say, I've lost my wallet, I've lost this, I've lost that, I've lost that. We're pretty blasé, or we're pretty liberal about historical information, about keeping a close watch on our historical information. Once you put that information on the net, it's there forever. And then, with historical information, we can start building a tree. We can start building an individual picture of someone. So there's your mother's surname, there's a date of birth, blah, 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 and build your way forwards. So that's probably the basis of it. We just advise extreme caution with putting information on the net. And I know for myself, and again, thinking about identity fraud, I would be less than happy with somebody having all the information about me without my knowledge, or about my kids, and that's the worst thing. And then on top of that, what are they doing with it? So again, just keep that in the back of your mind about identity crime and fraud, and just have a bit of a think about why we don't release so much information. And also, when you get your info, what are you going to do with it? So it's something to keep in the back of your mind. Enough of that stuff. Let's get on to more happier things, projects. So what projects are we doing? Revitalization. I love that word, revitalisation. It's new, it's great. We began our revitalisation program about 3 years ago. The objective at that time was to look at our business and redesign it and realign it with new technology. The internet, that's it. The internet these days, mobile phones, tablets, and whatever else you can contact people on and order things on, which we've already seen. But our revitalisation program will deliver in a number of areas, and probably the biggest one is efficiency. If you've used the online ordering system before, you know now that you can go on there, you can order an image or you can order a certificate. If you order an image, you can pay for it straight away, and 2 seconds later you can download it. You've got it on your doorstep. And as I said, certificates before, and Stephanie mentioned it, the breadth of information on a certificate, you can have that within hopefully 5.5 days. So this negates you having to fill out forms or don't have to go into the registry anymore. The costs have been reduced. So there's a whole range of things in there that make it more efficient for our customers. Other things we're doing, you can now, hospitals can register births online, funeral directors can register deaths online. We're working on marriage celibates being able to register marriages online. And also we're working on the ability for us to, for our customers to be able to order birth, marriage and death certificates online as well. So will we become paperless? Maybe not, but we'll certainly be easier to interact with, for sure. And hopefully our business will be more efficient and streamlined. We'll be able to provide much more, a much deeper range of services to our customers. Another part of the revitalisation program is the quality of our data and the completeness of registration information, and I'll just go into that now. As you probably know, some of you may not, in the States, very early life, events used to be recorded in parish registers in churches, and that would be put in the drawer, and eventually we got some of those into the registry, and they've been digitised, and you can order them online now. You can see them and order them online. In 1856, we had compulsory life event registration, and what happened at that point in time was that a life event occurred and was recorded by a district registrar in what's called a source document. And I've got source documents here that you can have a look through later on. Those source documents were then transcribed into another register in the district itself, similar to one of those big ones. And then once every quarter, the source document and a copy of the register came to the main registry, and they were recorded again into one of these big books. So we've got 3 levels of recording in there, so you can see where I'm going. And although we had compulsory registration in 1856, that didn't mean every event was recorded. So since we've had this going, this online system going, I get a lot of feedback and I read it. And a lot of people say, well, I know that my great-great-grandfather, Herbert Aloysius Smith, died in Blackbutt in 1802, and I've seen his headstone. Why don't you have a record? I've searched for it on the thing and I can't find it. Where's the record? And if I can't find it, guess where I go? Graham. And if Graham can't find it, it probably means we don't have the record for a number of reasons. I mean, was the event given to the registrar to record? Did the registrar record it? Was it transcribed into the next register? Did it end up at the registry? And was it transcribed at the registry? And was it transcribed incorrectly And did it even arrive there at all? No, there might be a range of things. So before you start throwing empty bottles at us and saying you haven't done your job properly, we may not have the record at all. So that's probably a consideration to keep in the back of your mind. So again, even if compulsory registration did come in 1856, it doesn't matter if everything, or doesn't mean that everything was recorded. Another request I have, I've ordered a certificate or I've ordered an image, and my Auntie Betty had an E on the end of her surname, and I've got the certificate here and it doesn't have an E on the end of it. Can you change your records? It's probably not as easy as that. And as I was saying before, those levels of transcription can sometimes end up like this. And this is a registrar who was in the Brisbane registry called Mr. Chestermaster. What happens when you order a certificate, if we don't have an image available, we have a production slip printed and one of our staff will go at the back and get the book, and then that book will go into one of our typists, and the typists will need to decipher that, put that information into the database and then press the button to print the certificate. So now we've got about 5 or 6 different levels of where something can go wrong. And sometimes it does, and it does. I think it's this one. That scroll on the side there means that the person looking at this name here couldn't decide whether it was David or Daniel. So he had to go and look at the birth register to find out if it was Daniel or David. So that was probably a conscientious clerk. Maybe 9 times out of 10, most clerks will say, that'll do for David, and away you go. So you're off. So we get into the first level of problems going through our records, and this is a lot of places where things happen. And I think we were talking before about things being recorded nowhere near where they're supposed to be, and it throws you right off the track. So is it our fault? I think you'll probably see, if you want to come down and have a look later on, you can see this. Sometimes we had to take pot luck about what it was as well. Okay. Now, as you're probably all aware, you probably know about our digitisation program. It started a couple of years back, and the concept behind this was to take all of our paper records, scan them, and put all of that information into our database. So that essentially speaking, you can go in, search a record, and you'll see an image of that event. And you can order that image, or if you do want it, you can order a certificate, and basically what will happen with the certificate is that information will go onto a piece of certificate paper and be sent out to you. With that, and at the end of 2015, as I've already mentioned, we try to have an image for each historical record. And again, that's balancing off what I was saying before. Should we have launched this year, or should we have left it till 2015? I think the majority of people said launch now and fill it up. The other thing is, how will I find it? So a lot of people say, well, you haven't got an image for this particular event there. I'll show you later on down the track through the presentation. There is a spot on the website in the information, if you take the time to read it, where you can see what images are available for what years. And we'll be updating that as we put more images onto the net. Right. Now, our web presence. You probably have noticed that we've changed homes. And we're actually living in there now, in the queensland.gov.au site. So you probably woke up in the morning of 6th of June and pressed your favourite link to go to the search engine, and you went nowhere. So you had to start digging around looking for where we'd gone. And essentially, you can get us 2 ways, either there or there, for Queenslanders, or to your rights, crime and the law. And I'll answer one of your questions that I know is bubbling away at the moment. There, and then we go to there. So that looks absolutely nothing like what we had before. We were probably at 3 weeks to go before we launched, and we had launched around the design of our old site, and we were told by Corporate Services Branch, because this initiative of OneGov is now in force, we needed to redesign our face, basically, so that we looked more like this. So essentially, when you visit us now, you'll probably see that search engine. A lot of people saying, well, this search engine is nothing like the one I used to use before. In actual fact, it is. It's the same. Essentially, what happens now is when you go to our search engine, because we had to get it into production so quickly, we take you from there back to the old site. There's a little bit of a business goes on back here, and then you're brought back to here to make it look like this. So it's fairly convoluted, but we're working on a new design and shortly that'll be fixed. And there's a couple of other little bugs in there, and we were talking about a couple before where there were marriages on the old site that don't show up on the new one. Or there are births that show up on the old one with the mother's name, but they show up on the new one with no mother's name. So these problems will be ironed out with the new release, and we're quite aware of them. So the old site will actually be decommissioned, so everything that you're doing on the old site at the moment will actually end up on this one, and that'll have the OneGov look and feel to it. And the reason for that is because we're part of the wider Department of Justice and Attorney General, so it'll conform. So it'll look and feel like the new website. You can still get there, it's still got all the information. If you've been using the website, who's seen that useful and not useful under there? No one? Who has? Who's provided feedback? Has anybody provided feedback? You have? No? Oh, right, okay. If you press on either of those, you're given a message when you go there that your feedback won't be responded to. However, I've been receiving all of that probably for the last couple of months now. If there's a phone number or an email address on there and the problem is to do with I can't get into the website or I ordered an image and I can't get it, if it's along those lines, I'll answer it, so I'll come back to you. And I'll make sure I do that because I want to provide as good a service as I can do for the people that use our search engine. And also with that useful or not useful, you can leave feedback there as well. So when I mean feedback like, I don't think this is any good because of these reasons. I get a lot of feedback saying, is this site useful? No. Great. Or I can't find a record, your database is broken. This site does not work. About 179,000 people have been using it, so it has to work. It's got to be your computer. So all of that stuff. So if you do want to leave feedback, I will read it, and if it's relevant to the site and it's an improvement that I can bring up, and I think it should be brought up, I'll certainly take it into consideration. Around about 1,500 bits of feedback we've had so far. What's other good ones? The other one too I get a lot of is, I can't find a record that I know is in your database, please help, with no contact details. Sorry. And the other thing we'll do is too, if you do use useful or not useful, maybe it's a good idea too for some people, if they look at the family history page, these tips I've got on here, or these tips that we've built in here, can be quite a good mine of information for people that may not understand fully about how to work the site, but you can get a lot of info out of here. And again, if you read the instructions first off, it can probably save you the effort of getting excited and upset and going to the useful or not useful section and swearing at us, because it does nobody any good. So things like, I find a lot of information, some questions. Why don't you have an image or an event that happened in 1892? Well, you can find that out with the image and certificate descriptions within the information section. Will tell you, for these years you can only get an image and a certificate, or for these years you can only get a certificate. So there's the problem solved. What's another one? I can't find births. This is a good one. I get a lot of these. I can't find a record for my brother who was born in 1921. We only released stuff till 1914. So again, if you look at the access policy, you'll be able to see, well, I can't get that because I'm going to have to wait till that period of time. So again, a lot of things with the tips can help you out a fair bit. The other ones I get, and I'm quite surprised about this, why don't you have a wild card? Well, we do. It's been there since 2010. So, and I'll talk about our wild cards in a minute. Another one, why can't the results be sorted alphabetically? And Stephanie brought that up. Well, they can be, just press on the column. So you can read that in the tips, it'll give you all that information. I don't know what the codes mean. It's pretty easy. In the tip said there's a table with all the codes. Has anybody been through the help section in the website? Yeah. So a lot of those things can be solved. I know that a lot of people get excited and upset because sometimes they can't understand the information or they can't research. So anyway, have a look at the tips. Search engine. As I mentioned before, the new search engine is the same as the old search engine. So it'll go through updates, and I'll show you that. Show you what we're going to do with that shortly. How are we going for time, Steph?
Don't worry about it, Mike. What you're saying is more important.
Oh, thanks. I like that. I might stay here longer. So the old search engine is the same as the search engine. Use the tips to be able to search more effectively. I'll show you a few things in a minute, but Steph stole a lot of my thunder with that, which is good. Use the prompts for your data entry. Widen your search and stay calm and relaxed. That's the most important thing. If you stay calm, I'll stay calm. It's great. So if we have a look here, so that effectively is the input that we've got at the moment. And I had an email from a gentleman the other day, and he said, I can't work the search engine. I've put in the dates of an event I know has happened. I've put it in as 27 July 1802. I've put it in as 27 July 1802. I've put in 27 JUL 1802. 27 blah blah blah. It'd gone through a range of stuff, and I emailed back and said, hover over the question mark, because that'll give you the exact data entry format. So it's as easy as that. And you could have found that by the tips. Quite easy. Yep. That'll be changed, and I'll go through that. But it's really important, and I know that if you're like me and you can't work a website out, you get cross. And maybe the dog or the cat will suffer. But read the tips. A beagle, I'll tell you, a beagle will suffer. So read the tips. The other thing too is, and Steph's brought it up before, I had another email from somebody, they said, I'll put in the last name Smith, I'll put in the first name John Aloysius, I'll put in the father's name Fortescue David Henry, I'll put in the mother's name Alexandrina Jane Davina, and I'll put in the exact date of birth, and I didn't get a result. We've already seen there's about 15 different levels of mistakes that can happen. If you put in a wrong A, or you put in a Y for Aloysius where it should have been an R, there could have been a range of things. Yep. So I went back to him and said, put in Smith, put in Aloysius, and put in 1882, and the result came up. So like Steph was saying before, broaden it, just broaden it. If it's Smith, you probably want to put in a John, or whatever the first name was, or whatever. If you've got a mother's name or a father's name, that'll help. But broaden your search out, and you're more likely to get a result. And I've have a range of those problems that come through all the time. And it's good that you know all the details too. I mean, that's not an issue, but the fact of the matter is, sometimes in here there'll be a different name or a different spelling, and if it is, you won't get a result. And a lady was doing something simple as spelling Helen H-E-L-L-E-N when she should have been spelling it H-E-L-E-N, and she didn't get a result. So I think she said she'd been on it for hours doing it. I'd have better things to do. I would have smashed it by then, but anyway. So again, read the tips, and it'll broaden your mind in your research. Okay. Where to from here? Now, as I mentioned, this was developed and launched to a deadline of the 6th of June. Were there problems? Yes, there were. Was there a lot of feedback? I can tell you there was. And we did take some of that feedback and we did make some changes, but there's more coming. Okay? So your feedback is listened to. And I know that you're all waiting for question time to ask me heaps of stuff about what about this, what about that, that doesn't work. So what I'm going to do is get in first and tell you what's going to happen to the search engine. So within the next couple of months, I'm working on this now, so within the next couple of months, the front page icons will link directly to your birth, death and marriage search pages, so you won't have to go through terms and conditions anymore. So we had a lot of screaming about that, so we moved it. And terms and conditions will appear when you go to the add to the cart button. So if you order, you press add to cart, then you'll have to acknowledge the terms and conditions. So there'll be a checkbox and away you go. A couple of these things we went through with Steph a couple of weeks back. All naming fields will be mandatory. So that will alleviate your problem of trying to search where you know a mother's name and you know the child's name and you've got a broad date. So the surname will not be mandatory anymore. So it should open you up to a lot more wider searching. I'll just mention that at the same time though, if you put in John and you put in 1889, you get about 1 million records, but the system will time out after 1 minute. Yep. So again, that comes back to what we were talking about before. We don't want to make as broader access as this. We want to try to keep it within the realms of possibility, and for you guys to be able to at least put in some input. Yep. Date of event field will be removed, and you'll have the date to and from. So you'll still be able to search on an exact date, but it'll be a little bit more broader for you. That man who had the question about the question mark or the date input will remove the question marks, and within each data box will be ghost text. And what that means is, do you know that sort of hazy stuff you see, where it gives you an idea what to put in, and once you start typing, it'll go away. That'll make it easier. Steph had me in a headlock for half an hour with this wildcard issue. So the wildcard will be now at the front of the data input, not at the back. So that will make it a little bit easier. This has been a bugbear for a while, and I've seen a lot of feedback about this. The data input screen will be removed, or the data input fields will be removed from your search results screen. So when you get your results up, they'll be tabular, so they'll be in a table, like New South Wales, and you won't have the surname, Christian name, blah, 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 date of entry, so that'll all be gone. You'll just get your results. And on the top, you'll have a description of who you searched for and the date you were after. So I know a lot of family historians want to get that information and print it out. You can do. So it'll make it easy for you there. And also that registration code table will be displayed on the right-hand side of the screen, sort of over here somewhere. So when you get your results up, you'll be able to see that immediately about the area that it's occurred. So those things, essentially speaking, have come from feedback, and that's constructive feedback. So we've looked at all that, and a lot of it, good information has come from Steph. So we think that will be out probably 1 or 2 months, hopefully by the end of September, early October. So that'll give you a lot more flexibility and ease with your searching. So do we listen to your feedback? Yes, we do. And we're nearly finished. Just a couple of things before we go. Is how many subscribers do we have to our family history journal? None. One. 2. Is that it?
I think you're going to get a lot more, Mike.
There's 700, this morning I think 703 this morning, subscribers to the Family History Journal. That's where you find it on the net. You can just press on that, put in your details, and you can subscribe or unsubscribe if you don't like it anymore, but I don't think you will. Is it a phone? Lucky. That was the last edition. That's been out for a couple of months now. That's still available. I don't know if you can see that from here, but there's a lot of good information about what's going on in the registry, some different ideas about what we do with our records, access policies, blah, blah, blah. The last bit down the bottom is the most interesting part, though. We have a pretty clever cookie up at Corporate Services branch who writes all of our copy, and he's in the registry or in with our books quite a lot, researching things, and he gets all this information out of trove. It's just absolutely amazing. And he'll come down and he'll get information from the books, and then he'll construct a story, and he'll put them onto our newsletter. A couple of his last stories were a small child way out west somewhere or other, who was bitten by a centipede and died. And he'd researched and he'd gone to the CSIRO, and the CSIRO said, no, well, you can't die of a centipede bite. But it's recorded in the death register as dying as of a centipede bite. So it's a good story behind that. And another one of a couple of young kids or young boys who were annoying the hell out of a cassowary. So the cassowary went and knocked one of the boys off, so he went and killed him. So it's quite interesting. There's the next edition coming up. So we've got the World War I records. There's a bit of information. And the facility, that's Jared Blahey and the registrar down the aisle of one of the books. I was talking to Graham before, we've got about 2,500 of those books in the registry at the moment, so they'll all disappear over the next couple of years and go to archives. A story about the Kenneth brothers, Australia's last bushrangers, a bit about the cricket, and a couple of stories here, and these are just fascinating. They blew my mind the other day when you told me. And I'll give you you're not supposed, don't tell anyone about this or they won't register. This is just between me and you.
And the rest of Queensland.
Shh, don't say that. There was a gentleman this happened in Rockhampton actually. He died, he got ran over by the number 15 tram. What actually happened was, he was riding his bike home, he went into the couldn't stand it any longer, so he left his bike on the tram tracks, ran into the toilet, heard the tram coming, thought I've left my bike on the tram tracks, ran back out to the tram tracks and him and the bike got cleaned up. So he ended up under the tram. Apparently his last words were, "Get this tram off me." But I think there was a word in between that and tram. It started with an F. And during the inquest, they worked out that he was a butcher and he was riding home and they found his bike and a leg of pork further down the tracks of the tram. So it's just huge. There's another story there too about a lady. Apparently there was there were 3 other deaths on the number 15 tram too, up in Rocky, so I think it was cursed. There's another story there too about a lady who came off a tram and she got her dress caught in a car going past. And the coronial inquest said there was a car going at the reckless speed of 8 miles an hour going past the tram, cleaned her up. And actually, the man up at CSB said that actual incident gave rise to the Registrar General formulating road rules in Queensland. It was that event. So some hugely interesting articles that are coming out in this register, and they're really good read too. So you saw it was, go and sign up. The other thing I need to do, who's on Twitter? Couple? Yep. We're now on Twitter as well. So if you want to go onto Twitter and register, there's some more good stuff that goes on the Twitter account. Probably the most important bit that we do with Twitter is we also put advance warning when the system's going to be down. So if you get a Twitter account or if you get a Twitter message saying we're going to be out this weekend, don't bother searching because you won't be able to use the search engine. So sign up for that. The other present that Kate's got too, and I think she might have handed a few of these out already, Corporate Services Branch would like to invite you to become part of a research group. So if you've got feedback about, I don't think this is any good for this reason, put it down on here, or you can go onto the net and send it in, and they'll take those things into consideration in the layout of the site. So it's too hard to navigate between here and here because of these reasons. That's all the stuff that these guys do. I think that's about me done. So don't forget the journal. Now, have we got 5 minutes?
Yeah, as long as you like.
As long as I like. You putting on lunch?
No.
No, okay, right. So that's me done, and thanks for your attention. I'd like to invite some questions. If I just could clarify that if you have precise things about my Auntie Mabel's not on the birth register, I'll hang around for a while, and I'm sure Graham will too. We can help you out with those. Now, if there's anything too technical, I'm going to send it to Graham if I can't answer it myself. So please ask questions.
Charlie's got a roving mic here, by the way, so that we can get questions for everybody.
You mentioned earlier on about Helen with the 2 L's instead of the 1.
Yep.
Are you looking at doing something like a Soundex search somewhere down the track?
A Soundex search.
As in, it sounds like Helen. Or Ellen.
The only thing that I could suggest to you when you're looking at something like that is to broaden out your search some more. If you're not getting any results with Helen double L, try Helen 1L.
Well, yeah, it wasn't that specific one. I was just wondering whether it was, you're looking broader.
Probably not at this stage. I mean, if that's a part of you, if that's a consideration that you think we should think about, definitely put in some feedback, for sure.
I'm ignorant to the difference between an image and a certificate.
Okay. Yep. An image is a scanned copy of that register. Yep. However, a certificate is done on a piece of paper, on a piece of certificate paper, It'll have the same information and it'll just be laid out differently. You'll find that as we go forward, this is one of the things I was going to bring up to you before. We're still in the mid-process of digitising all of our records. So, for example, if you ordered a death certificate now of a record that we don't have an image of, we have to have the girls go out the back and grab the book, bring it in, type all the information in and print it out on a certificate. As we go forward, if you order a certificate that we already have an image of, we'll just take that image and put it onto the bit of paper. Does that make sense? Yeah? So by 2015, everything will have an image. If you do want a certificate, you can still order it, but essentially what you'll get is a copy of the image on a bit of paper. Yep.
Through registry, can we go to some more esoteric sites or departmental sites like adoptions, prisons, things like that? Not that I'm suggesting I'm related to a prisoner, maybe a judge. But can we go to other sources in government that have a similar setup to yours, but aren't motor vehicle registrations, things like that? I assume not.
I don't know that you can do. I'm not sure, Graham. Do you know anything about that? You certainly can't get adoption records until...
You would have to go through You'd have to go... There is an agency worksite, is there?
We have, and that's on your information.
Yeah, sure.
I
Yeah.
handed out useful websites. But when it comes to old government records, what you need is state archives. It's their responsibility to keep the state records. But we have a lot of useful links that have useful websites. And then over here.
So my question was, having looked at one of the examples you used, are you using any software to clean up and the images when you're digitising them, making them much more readable?
We can only scan what's there. Probably the age and the quality of some of the records don't lend themselves quite well to scanning. We can't make them any clearer than we...
There is software available, isn't there?
There probably is too,
up?
but I'm not involved in the actual mechanics of how it gets scanned. And that's probably the best we can do, I think.
Thank you. This is probably maybe more a policy question. My grandmother died in the last 10 years and I tried to apply for her death certificate. I was told that it's 30 years now for a sort of fairly current death, even though I can prove my relationship by certificates, obviously, unless I get written permission from one of her living children to do that. Can you, I mean, I assume it's for an identity fraud thing. Is that correct?
I don't know so much about identity fraud, but our policy is essentially what you've described it as. So you, as a grandchild, wouldn't be able to get the record.
So I'd have to wait another 20 years. So...
Graham will...
I don't speak to those people, and there's an issue there, and it's for medical history.
Sure.
So I was a bit shocked that, because I have my grandfather's record from the 90s, so obviously that policy's come in place since then.
I think it's been around for a while, Graham. Yeah.
It's always been at least 30 years. It's actually more than that.
Okay.
So if you've got your grandfather's death certificate, you've got that through some.
I got it through your office. Someone was being kind to me, maybe. Thanks.
For births on board ship, immigrating in the last century or the 19th century, do those births get registered in Queensland, at the registry? Or
As far as I understand it, Graham, it's the port of entry.
First port of call.
okay. Yeah, I haven't tried to access it, but I was wondering.
First port of call. And it's still applied to that.
Right, thanks.
Just Steph brought up too, when you find a record and it's got an M on it, the M stands for marine birth. Yep. Or death.
This is probably a question for Graham.
It probably is.
With a birth registration, if the child was born at Dunwich in the 1930s, that was a lunatic asylum, would it have Dunwich on it, or would it just have Brisbane? Oh, it definitely would. Okay, that's great.
I think we might have to wrap a bit
Yep.
because people are ready to go.
Press it up.
Look, I'd like to thank Mike and Graham and Kate for coming today. It's great to get to the actual source of information and to see not only what's happening but why it's happening and what's coming. Can I emphasise how important it is that you fill out your evaluation form and not just tick the circles, but if there was something of value or that annoyed you, that you write that down. Mike has mentioned that he's happy to send his slides. If you want the slides, put that on the sheet with your email, or if you want to come in and collect them later, let us know that as well. But try to make your evaluation form as useful as you possibly can. And thank you to everyone for coming today and for the registry for making themselves available.
You're quite welcome to come and have a look at the books on your way through if you would like.